Hi, Lisa. I'm so excited for you to join us today.
Hi, Steph. Thank you.
Yeah, so let's get started. I wanted to frame it for everybody. So I feel like right now everybody is drinking their bone broth and they're making it, they're meal prepping, and it's good for your immune health, your gut health, your skin, the ultimate hack to lose weight. Tell me a little bit about like how would you compare bone broth to what were, thousands of years around Chinese soups? Like how do you make those comparisons and how do you want to introduce this to everyone?
Well, essentially, bone broth is just one category of ingredients within the whole frame of what traditional Chinese medicine as food can offer. And I think from a Western perspective, it's easy, right? It's accessible. It's something that you make soups with bones naturally. To me, it's very Western how I grew up as well. Like you've got chicken soup, you've got your beef broth. But beyond that, that's why it kind of starts that way. But what about flowers and what about berries? And so that's actually the interesting layer that Eastern brings on top.
Mm,
And not only that, you're talking about twigs and branches and bark, right? And so that's the next level of TCM that you can bring into broth, essentially. And it's not just bone
yeah.
broth.
Okay, I feel like there's so much to that, but maybe let's walk back to, your journey and what is your whole journey and experience around how did your first interactions with soup?
It started really for me intentionally. So soup has always been a natural part of my lifestyle growing up. And so it doesn't look like anything different. You use a fork, it's there, you don't question it. And we had soup at the dinner table, no water, nothing iced. Never questioned it. It was just the way my life was. And I think it became very apparent that something's missing in my understanding of knowledge when I started making soups for my own baby. So when my daughter was born, she's 20 now, I was like, what is that floating around? I want to make this for her too, but I have no idea where to start, what it is, what's in it. And that really started that journey about exploring, documenting generational wisdom and knowledge around soups.
And I think that's similar to myself. Like growing up, I had so much soup and tea, and it wasn't something that you really thought about. Like, is this, you know, medicinal? Like, food is medicine. Like, it was just like, oh, I had a sore throat. My grandmother would make me like pear tea with some chun pea or, something like that for my throat. And it wasn't until I think after I gave birth, right? And I had a Chinese nanny that made me all these different soups and teas, and it sort of made you think back to those moments. And I think over college, I tried to make soups and it was just not, I like was not good at it. But yeah, that's, I think for so many of us, it is that sort of you grow up with it. For your family, what kinds of soups and teas do you remember being some of the key ones growing up?
Well, there's a lot. I mean, I think one of the big ones that stand out, and a lot of the kids probably experience this as well, is watercress. And watercress is a pond vegetable, so they're in fresh water, but they harbor a lot of flies and bugs. And this is the one thing growing up in it is that we would always, every time we had watercress soup, we would be, me and my sisters, scrutinizing the soup for the little bugs that are sitting in the little pots of oil, right? And be like, there's one, there's one. And that's just my parents would be like, extra protein, drink it. Yeah. And that's like a huge memory for me. And also ginseng being also like bitter. It's good for you, right? The message always was, it's good for you. Don't question it. Just drink it.
Yeah, yeah. And so go into that sort of Chinese soups have a lot more layering, right? And then when you think about the bone broth, right? So like what are we missing here when you're thinking about bone broth versus these more Chinese soups and the complexities, layering?
The question I always throw out when I'm helping people think about soup as a part of their lifestyle is, what is the principle of your soup design? If we're treating food as medicine or food as a part of our own well-being, it has to be intentional. And so the layer that needs to come on top, first and foremost, to think about, all right, what's the outcome I'm trying to create for me, for my family, my children, in terms of well-being? What do I want to create as that feeling, that taste, that wholeness, that wellness? And allow that to dictate and drive then how you create your soup. What's going to be the protein based on that? What's going to be the herbal base? What's going to be the flavor base? Right? And so that's the layer that's a bit different from the Western bone broth thinking of making soups.
Mm, okay. And when you plan out your week of soups, right? What is your starting point? Are you starting with, okay, my intention is, are you going in with taste first? Or are you going in with like, I want to address, I don't know, you've been traveling and, there dampness, and I don't even want to go into so much of the dampness part, but yeah, like how do you start with?
So a great one, especially for women, and because I have two daughters, a very, very common one that I start with is, all right, where are we in the menstrual cycle? Typically, after the period, all of us or whoever, I will make this type of soup, right? Tend to be chicken, warmer, red dates, blood or qi nourishing, right? And so there's a very specific match with the body and our body's cycles. Our body works on circadian rhythm, first of all, and also natural rhythms, right? And so it's actually pairing it with that as well. And so when you say travel, there's a rhythm that's either off or on, right? If you're jet lagging, that means you're off cycle, right? And so you want to support that cycle. So if we think of our bodies and as little machines that have very natural rhythms as the world, the sun and the moon, they cycle the day, it's the same thing, right? So there's some soups that actually tend to fit better in those cycles than others.
Okay. And then, so your husband then just partakes.
Yeah. I mean, for it depends. Sometimes I'll make two soups too, but those soups are easy, right? Like if I'm making a post-menstruation soup, it tends to be one small pot, one bowl each, three of us, very dense, right? Boiled or just intensely boiled in that little pot. And then, or I'll make another soup right afterwards, but again, or a tease, right? And so it's not necessarily specific in that I'm going to plan it, because I don't always plan it. I kind of
Mm,
know where we are and I'll have ingredients around and then pair it with whatever is at the supermarket that I can get, right? So that's kind of the flow. And in Hong Kong, you have the same. The wet mart's right there, right? So you just go down, you buy, and the ladies there, the men will tell you, this is fresh in season. You're going to buy this. You got that. So they're actually communicating something very similar without us realizing it.
yeah, yeah. And talk a little bit about the seasonality and, how you decide to make the different soup that that is on your like roster.
So one of the first basic TCM theories is that the outside impacts the inside. So for example, when it's heavy, wet, raining, what that does is increase humidity, and then our skin absorbs that, our body absorbs it. The air we breathe in absorbs it into our lungs. So our body in general then naturally becomes a little more humid or damp. And so typically matching weather with what are the properties that a soup carries. They have thermal properties as well. They could be either cooling or warming. And it's not the same as temperature thermal. It's a different type of thermal. And that's what it means when we talk about traditional Chinese medicine natures. And so just being aware of how they pair. So if it's cooler in the winter, we typically want to lean more towards yang or warmer soups to help us rebalance that thermal nature in us.
Yeah. And then, so as we're going into like spring and summer,
Yeah.
what are your tips and what are your favorite soups?
So melons are really good. So again, when we're thinking about humidity, and how heavy it can feel, bloated, low, lethargic, right? And in the spring, it's really a season of growth, right? We're coming out of the winter. We want to rejuvenate, reach out, be creative, and release all that. So we want soups that are more diuretics, right? Where help us push the dampness, help us pee more, release more liquid, sweat, whatever that happens to be. So beans,
Mm,
barley, corn silk is an interesting one that's not commonly talked about, but it's actually that hair of the corn. You just dry it yourself. And that stuff is like free when you buy corn, right? So you can make it yourself. Melons, they all pair with melons. So great. And roots, arrowroots, lotus roots are all great for this season right now.
okay. Okay. And I think you also talked about the different boiling methods. And that's sort of such a big topic in itself, right? Because say in like Western like bone broth, there's only one way, right? But for Chinese soups, it's like your quick boil, your double boil, your like long boil. Like, what is the difference?
The difference is there's two answers to that. The first is, can the ingredients sustain the heat and intensity that's being put into? So for example, leafy vegetables tend not to be in long boils or double boils. And that's just because the integrity of the ingredient will disintegrate, break up, and just be all over the place, right? And so that's one factor in deciding, all right, is it going to be a long boil or a short boil or a quick boil or a double boil?
Right. And so for us that are newbies here, explain double boil, explain all of it, and like give me the time. Like,
Okay, this is not an easy one. So I like answering questions with questions. So the question I would ask back is, as someone, is like, how do you know when a soup goes from water to soup, right? That transition, how do we know? You don't, right? You taste, right? And so the high level general though is quick boil is something that happens quick, 30 minutes max cooked. And basically this tends to be with those leafy greens, spinach, watercress. Those are things that going in last. You can have a watercress soup that's a long boil, but the watercress goes last, right? And then you've got what's known as old fire soup. Those are your long boils. And the reason it's called old fire is because back in the days, it would be sitting on a fire literally for a long time until the soup got older. And then that's the long boil. And those are really good for extracting the bone flavors, the broths, but roots. And some of the herbs do need longer boils to really fully release their benefits.
your bone broth is sort of your long boil soup equivalent,
Correct.
right?
Correct. Yes. Yeah. And then you've got double boiled, which is a fun one. Double boiled tend to be a long boil as well. It's actually slower because if you think about the mechanics, it's actually one pot inside a bigger pot. That's why it's the double boiling. And so, or a bowl inside a pot. And so you're actually not boiling the soup on the inside. You're relying on the water on the outside pot to heat the inside pot. And that's why it takes even longer. More intensity of fire or heat.
Okay. And so when are you double boiling?
In Chinese soups, double boils tend to be for those tonics. Deep, rich chicken tonics tend to be chicken tonics, although pork does go in them for flavor. And sometimes, very often, the thicker fish maw, bird's nest, anything that's delicate and you don't want really breaking up or just gently stirring inside itself. So double boils typically reserved for that really precious tonic type of soup.
Thank you for clarifying. Like, I feel like there's so much about, the spectrum, right? And for me, it's like clearing that up, super helpful. And when you think about like the different, like for your gut, for your skin, like for your sleep, like how do you layer that into like seasonality as well? There's so much to take into account. So it's so confusing, right? So you're like soup by design. I can either go like with my taste buds, or if I can go with the season, I want to go with your cycle. Or what about just for skin or sleep? Like, what about those?
You can definitely prioritize those as choice as well. So a few ways to go about it. There are some ingredients that can be added to soups that can help the skin, let's say in the summer, or help your skin in the winter. So one of those such ingredients could be snow fungus, let's say, right? You can add it both to spring soups or winter soups or fall soups. They blend really nicely with, depending on the ingredients, but that's where they're flexible. So that's something you can think about as well. But the thing is, you have to know these ingredients, right? And so there is a learning curve to understanding what the ingredient does. So that's one way. However, there's also another way to say, you know what, I'm going to be intentional this week and make skin collagen boosting soup. So for example, that could be just like hit on all the chicken feet, 20 of them into a pot, go with some red dates, shiitake mushrooms, something simple, but allow that collagen in the feet to just burst out. And you say, that's my collagen soup, very intentional.
Yeah. Okay. And then what about for somebody that has issues with their sleep?
So there's the approach in traditional Chinese medicine is that fatigue and sleep actually can branch. So this is kind of like the branch, but the root itself could be many different issues. And so it's not as easy as saying, oh, I don't sleep well, therefore it's a one-to-one match on a certain herb. There's a lot of factors that go into it. For example, you could be, let's say, deficient in yin, which is the liquids inside. So typically, for example, for me, I'm going through perimenopause, I don't have enough moisture or liquids, right? And so that always causes me to wake up 3, 4 in the morning. So that's when I don't have enough moisture. And yin is the cooling agent. So like my air conditioning is broken. That's how you can see it like. But there's also another one where your heat is on all the time, right? So in my case, my aircon's broken, so I feel hot. But there's another case where your heat is just broken and you feel hot. So see how you still feel hot? And you can be not sleeping well because you're hot and the heat's just rising. And so it's not allowing your mind to settle, not allowing your heart to settle into sleep.
Mm.
So it's not as clear cut as I can't sleep, therefore it's going to be this ingredient. There's a lot of underlying paths that need to be kind of explored. And that's where I think the benefit of knowing your body. Do I know my body? And that's where you can really learn to start understanding, reading your own body to allow yourself to make decisions on what serves you best.
Yeah. And I think so much of us, we don't really take the time to know our bodies, right? It really is. I mean, I think everybody's wearing a tracker these days and seeing their vitals, but there's not enough time that we sit there and we just feel, right? And then I think I mean, for me, myself, like I feel like it's always like that balance of knowing your data, but really internally feeling your body.
Yeah. And there's a lot of external factors, though. People don't realize more that anything that we excrete is a data point. So, for example, all right, the most basic one that I try to teach people and my clients is, all right, look at your tongue. What color is it? Great, very simple indication. Is there a coating? The coating will indicate dampness, right? But of course, there's more like what color's the coating? How thick's the coating? Where's the coating? But fine, let's start with, but at least you know you're damp. Your poop, right? Does it stick to the toilet? That's a really basic one. How often are you pooing? So there's a few really well curated, I think, scientific mini tests that you can do on your own body to say, how is the state of my body?
Yeah. Yeah. And actually, we worked with our scientific advisor to create a body constitution quiz. And in Chinese medicine, as we know, there are 9 different body constitutions, right? And they switch over the years, over the seasons, and, and we wanted to really break it down to make it simple for people. So she's a professor from Hong Kong, and she worked with a professor from Beijing University to create these 90 questions in Chinese. So we were able to shorten it down 30, but still get the same validation, translated it into English, making it approachable. And so I highly recommend you try that out.
I will check it out and I love it. I love it.
Because as you said, it's really like the small things you can do to understand where you are, because the one size fits all just doesn't work these days, right? And there were so many times when I felt like, what? I'm doing all these things that are supposed to be right? Like I'm doing all these healthy things that people are doing, and shouldn't I feel a certain way? But you're still feeling like, why am I off, right? That's why I feel like it's so important. And then you're right, just like looking at your tongue.
Yeah, your pee frequency, poo, sweats, all of it. And the only person that's responsible for their body is themselves, right?
Yeah, so right. And okay, so switching gears here. There's so many different things on ingredients, right? In Chinese soups, I think for me, one of the biggest hurdles is how do you even approach it, right? I think bone broth already, it's like get the bones, roast the bone, that in itself is like a hard step for people to do, right? But at least the ingredients are quite curated, right? In Chinese soups, I was like, what? And a lot of my friends were like, how do you pronounce this ingredient? Because there's so many different names. And then when you go to buy it, like, okay, where do you buy it? And then they all look the same, but they're all priced differently. How do you find what's good quality?
All
I
right.
know there's a lot of questions. Attack it one at a time.
All right. Let's start with where do you start? You start with what you're comfortable. Start with one ingredient. Be familiar with it. Be how it works. Test it. Make soups with it. The best and easiest one is dried red dates. Commonly available in actually most countries around the world, even in Europe. Europeans have a little more issues with flowers because of some of their pesticides and their bug regulations. But dried red dates, based on my experience and the followers around the world, most people can get it. So try with that. Start with making teas with it. Start with making soups with it, right? And just start pairing it with a chicken, corn, carrots. That's it, right? Simple ingredients that you can find at your local supermarket. Doesn't have to be fancy. Pork, right? I don't know, pick a melon, anyone, doesn't matter. Put it with the red dates, see how it goes, right? But understanding, all right, red dates are a bit warmer and right. And so see how that feels, how it tastes, right? And so it's one at a time is really how I talk about introducing. It's just like how we introduce ingredients to babies, right? One at a time. The next one, the great one, right? Try another one like goji berries, right? Neutral, but also great for teas and soups. Try both. And then you mix and match what you have, because then there you can create one combination. You have a red date and goji berry, then you've got one combination. Great. Introduce another one when you're comfortable, right? And then you'll have your permutation combination. So as you increase that, it has to be at your level of comfort. And you don't need anything fancy. And this is where it's quite interesting. When I've done some of the frozen soup packs, if you watch some of the videos, it's just very basic. I've got like green, radish, carrots, corn, and a protein.
Yeah.
However, I think we've kind of grown up, especially in more very Asian households and in Hong Kong, that the more complex, the more ingredients, the more powerful it is, right? And so I think it's really challenging that limiting belief that no, simple can be actually powerful as well.
I love that. Okay. That's very, very reassuring, because when I look at my pantry today and I'm like, oh, I have all these little, with all the different herbs and the longan, and then I have like all the different kernels, and then the koi seed and the beans and the mung beans, and it builds, right?
Yeah.
And I think it gets exciting, right? Because then you don't need to go to the supermarket and find that certain thing. It's already there, but stashed somewhere,
Yeah. You talk about data as well. Look at the ones that you're using frequently, because those are the ones that you enjoy, that you know, right? And then, okay, fine, you can introduce a new one. But there are, I'm sure, some herbs in your pantry that you might have never touched for a long time.
Yeah.
That's very telling.
And how do okay, red dates and goji berries, right? They're quite universal. I think that you can easily find them. But how do you know it's good quality? How do you find what you want to buy?
Okay. So there's a few things you could think about quality. In general, the first one's color. It should look more or less the dried version of what it is, right? If it's dried red dates, expect them to be a darker red. Goji berry is the same. That's the first thing. Does it look like it should? The second one, and this is the big one, is smell. And I know some things you can't smell because they're in packages. There are some that you can buy, like pick and pack, fine, but you have to smell it. Does it smell slightly sweet? If at any point there's sour smells in any of the ingredients, that would be a red flag for me. Two reasons. One, sour is that things gone musty, it's gone pungent, not working what it should. The second one is that there's a lot of sulfur. So sulfur is a preservative that's very commonly used in a lot of herbal preservation. And when it's too much, when it's overkill, sulfur itself smells sour. And so one of the things they do teach us in school is smell. It's a smell test, really, right? And so if it smells sour, musty, disregard it. But in general, red dates and goji berries are eye tests. Good enough. Yeah.
Okay. And so you're basically going to like an Asian grocery store. Is that how the best way to source? Or could you just go on Amazon?
I've tried Amazon for goji berries and red dates. Okay sources as well. And it was, for me, I was just curious. I was like, hey, this is not bad. Then I'll rebuy, right? And
Okay.
so, yeah, it's basically experimental at this point, or get referrals.
And how do you prep these items before they go into a soup? Do you typically wash or, and this goes with like all the dried ingredients?
Yeah. Your choice. Again, so I say you're the chef. You do what you think is best for you. There's no right or wrong way at the very end. There are some ingredients that do need soaking, or it's just hard to use. However, two ways. One, if I'm lazy, I'll drop it in as is. Dried goji berries, dried red dates, right in. The red dates, though, without the pit. It's because the pit is known as fiery. So it's actually a lot hotter, the pit itself. Most pits are, than the fruit itself. And so that's just going to push the heat too much. So that's something to think about. But the goji berry seeds are fine. So one is drop it in. The other one is you can do a pre-soak. And the pre-soak is just scrub it. If you're worried about the sulfur preservatives or how they're preserving it, you can soak it first. However, in traditional Chinese medicine, most of the herbs are soaked, but the water's used. Right? Yeah. And so dried scallops is a great example where if you soak it, they expand and soften, but the water itself has so much of that flavor that's been seeped out. You want to use that too, right? And so again, it's completely up to you, but try them all. I've done them all, right? All variants of prep.
Okay. And since we're in the soak talk a little bit about like the snow fungus. I don't know why on my algorithm it's everywhere. How do you find, like, what are the benefits of like a snow fungus and how do you find a good one?
There's many types of snow fungus. And so the benefits of snow fungus is, okay, so here's the thing. I know there's a rhetoric out there that says it's got collagen. Collagen, if you Google it, is actually protein, which can be found in animals. So snow fungus itself is not collagen itself, but it has the properties that can allow you to retain collagen in your skin, encourage water retention. That's what it can do, right? So it actually supports the skin to do its natural function rather than giving you the protein of collagen. So that's the one difference with snow fungus, first up. The second thing about collagen is that it has the ability to retain water. And so what happens is that it can give us nourishing liquids as well. That's the idea. So it can nourish our body, our skin as well. To find good snow fungus, there's many types. You'll have ones that have a center. So most of them snow fungus is actually kind of like a mushroom that grows beside trees. It grows on the floor near certain trees. And so the idea is that they actually do come with a root where it kind of blossoms up. And if you buy whole snow fungus, sometimes they're so big that they cut off the middle. If you soak it, you'll notice and you'll feel that hard middle, and which is fine too, right? And so, but that is harder to chew, harder to digest. Again, typically cut out, and you keep only the softer edges. If you don't pre-soak, you can't identify where that middle is.
I see. Okay. So when you're looking for snow fungus, you should find the bigger ones. Is bigger, like whole, better than like all the ones that are like already pre-snipped up that are like the smaller ones?
Typically, yes, because if you think about how it's harvested and what they'll do is save all the scraps, and that's the less expensive ones, right? The more expensive are the whole ones because they're rarer.
Okay. Very helpful. Okay. I needed to know that for myself. In terms of meal prep, like I just want to make it easy for people to do, right? How would you meal prep your week for Chinese soup making? I know it's tricky, but what is the easiest way you could meal prep?
Two approaches. For busy people that work, the first approach is what I use is called the thermal pot. And basically, I'm not sure how common, it's not that common in the West, but everywhere in the East, it's basically a pot inside a thermal engineered pot that retains the heat. So it's a giant thermos. Look at that way. So what I do is I'll make my soup in the morning. Quick soup, that's pretty easy. I could do it in 15 minutes. So you could blanch the meats or not, pan fry or not, up to you, or do it all together in one pot. Chop up your veggies and drop in the dried ingredients. Bring that to a boil. Go get ready. So let it boil for about 30 minutes. Cover and put it in your thermal pot and then leave. And then by the time you get back after dinner, after work, because the heat's been retained, your soup's done. Yeah. Super
Amazing.
easy. The other way is I will take economies of scale and pre-prep frozen packs. And so the packs are in portions of 4 to 5 people, enough for a rice cooker. So you take it in the morning, drop it into your rice cooker, fill to the max water line, close it, and make rice. And then right after an hour, but you're gone. And then when you come home, your soup is already in the rice cooker finished.
Amazing.
Or my kids do it after school, right? I'm like, go take the soup, fill it to the water line, press cook. It's been quite successful as well. Yeah.
Oh, okay, cool. I'll have to try that. Thank you. And so then for myself, I have young kids. How do you get them to start the soup journey? My kids are 5 and 7, and they're like, at the end of dinner, they're like, no, I don't want soup, or like it tastes weird, or how do you get them into soup? What are some basic soups that are family friendly?
So you can try serving soup first. And I know some families serve it last. So it's interesting how it's traditional, right? Some serve it
Yeah.
first. So in my family, we served it first. So we were thirsty and hungry. So we would already have consumed half of it. And it's part of the meal. So the one thing is to just treat it as another course on the soup comes, drink a little bit, the rice comes, and then the dishes. So it's just part of the meal, right? That's one way to integrate it in its lifestyle. The other thing is go with flavors that they do like as a start, right? And so my kids love green radish, and they love the green radish with the red radish or carrots and corn. And so that was a really nice base that I used, but I'd switch maybe some chicken sometimes in the winter and then pork in the spring, add some beans sometimes. So the base would be very similar in things they liked, and then I would evolve it. And then once in a while I'd say, oh, try this soup, it's really good, and then see how they like it. But they tend to like things more flavorful, right? So that's where I really add shiitake mushrooms, dried scallops. Some of the dried seafood also bring out some of that more flavor and not the strangeness. And my mom, with my kids, she would always strain out all the extra, so she would pour it through a strainer. So the soup was pretty clean for them.
I see. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So they're just drinking soup without the distraction of whatever's floating around. Just drink it.
Okay. Good tips. Hopefully one of them will work on my kids. And final question, and maybe I should have asked earlier, but we talked about the different proteins, right? Chicken, pork, fish, or, beef. How do you pick what to use?
The decision point for me is going to typically be whether I'm looking for more cooling or for more warming. And the meats scale along cool to warm. So your coolest will be fish, fish heads, salmon, anything seafoody is going to be your coolest. Turtle, although that's not a common one in the West, alligator, crocodiles. And then as you move up, you've got pork, which is actually considered more neutral. So that's always a good one when in doubt. Then you've got your beef, then you've got your chickens as the warmest, and then lamb. Lamb is your warmest. Yeah. And so there's a range on the thermal temperatures. And so I usually use that as a decision point.
Okay. But the most commonly used is probably pork, would you say?
In Chinese, yes. In my soups, yes. It's easy. It's neutral. It fits with both warm or cool soups.
Yeah. I'd say that similar in our household. Amazing. Yeah. Is there anything that we haven't gone through yet that I feel like is so important?
Just start. That's all. Anyone who's curious to just try, just start somewhere. There's no perfect or right ingredient at the very end, right? It's very experimental. And you're the chef, right? You know your body, you know your family, you know your tastes. So
yeah.
That's it.
I love that. Thank you so much for making this accessible. I think that for so many of us, it's scary because there are just so many ingredients, but I love that you can bring flexibility to the soups, right? And kind of just pair and experiment. So yeah, amazing.
Yeah, that's really it.
Well, Lisa, thank you so much. And those who want to follow you, where can they find you?
I'm typically on Instagram. The full longer videos are on YouTube, just at the Chinese Soup Lady.
Amazing. And I love all your guides. So everybody needs to download your guides.
Thank you.
Amazing. Thank you.